Hello, everyone. I'm Mohit Yadav, and today we are going to talk about how to crack your coding interviews. We've had a couple of sessions this week, primarily focused on system design interviews, where I spoke about where have given you a framework around what is basically a typical framework that you should apply for your system design interviews. I also took one mock interview yesterday, primarily focused on system design, where we discussed how a Google search type ahead, for example, works. So those things we can do. Just one second. I'm sorry. I was. Let me just put my phone on hold. One sec. Yeah. Yeah. So that is what we have discussed yesterday. Today we have with us Rahul, who is a most decorated teacher in Scalar. His ratings are phenomenal. I think anything below 4.9 out of 5 is shame for him. So he's been most decorated and most loved teacher in Scalar. He has helped placed multiple students in farm companies. He himself have cracked multiple offers. Today we are not going to be speaking about them, but uh, with the kind of mentorship that he have provided, right? That also he has shown a tremendous success rate, and hence I have invited him for today's discussion, primarily talking and sharing his insights on how can people clear the coding interviews. Before we go in deep into the session, Rahul, do you have any first words, anything that you want to share now?
Okay, so that will be my general advice on any aspect. Uh,
Yeah,
you would face failures in life at times, you would be demotivated, but the main thing is practice is the main thing. I feel practice has made me win a lot of things. Never feel demotivated and keep on doing some hard work, and at the end, you will achieve, definitely. So
yeah,
that's
that's a
general advice.
that's a good way to start it. Many people get demotivated when they apply for apply for interviews, and so even if you get failure, right, try to learn something out of it. Try to know that, hey, this is the area that maybe I could have done better. Looking at a failure and learning from it is the best advice that anyone can give you. So uh, try to be motivated. If you're not motivated, if you can't, don't get scared if you are not able to solve, for example, hard problems, right? Start from an easy problem, maybe. That will give you confidence, and that confidence will speak volumes when you face the real actual interviews. uh, cool. Thank you for the insightful start, Rahul. uh, let's address the elephant in the room, right? The elephant in the room is, what is the ideal strategy for a person who's maybe applying for any product company interviews?
Okay, so I feel for any interview, the most important thing for any interview, like if you're moving from a service-based company to a product-based company or any other interview, DSA is one of the fields that will change your game, change your interview, how it's going. If you're good in it, the interviewer likes to see how you think, your thinking process, and that's the best way you can show what are your thinking skills, how well you can tackle a new problem. So I feel that data structure algorithm is one of the major topics of interviews, major that takes a lot of time in interviews, and on that topic, which will help interviewer judge you, your skills. So definitely DSA number one.
All right. I think DSA will hold your nerve as long as you are in the tech line, right? It doesn't matter whether you are applying for SD1 or an SD2 or SD3 or maybe a director of engineering as well. So I'll tell you a quick anecdote that I had in Nutanix, right? Uh, a senior staff engineer joined. He had 15 years of experience at that time, joined Nutanix. Even then, two of his rounds were purely based on DSA. So even after 15 years of experience, you will be tested upon this component. So it's very, very important that you clear this out, right? If you have to make a career in software engineering, DSA is a must have. Having said that, what are the main areas where a person should like let's start from a beginner, right? What kind of an
Right.
advice would you give to a beginner? A beginner, I'll tell you what is my definition of a beginner. A beginner is someone who is good in aptitude, right? He can solve puzzles, he's good in maths, but he has no experience of prior programming. So he does not know C, C++, nothing like that. So what would
Right.
you be your advice for this kind of a guy?
Exactly. So being a student from like plus two and plus one, you generally have to develop those aptitude skills by that time. And when you move to college, generally it's all the scenario. The scenario was the same for all the students that they are new to all the programming languages. They have never seen, they have not coded in a programming language. So the first
Right,
thing they should do is learn a programming language, learn the basics of it, and start making some small functionalities, some very small code pieces, code snippets, and it automatically you will feel so good. Like you just write a few lines of code, and that is doing something for you, right? So it automatically starts motivating. It's self motivation, I say. So the first step is learn a programming language. My recommendation would be C++ in perspective of DSA, but don't take my word for that. So yeah, definitely the first step is learning a programming language that would take you a far way ahead.
so any programming language, so there are varying levels of difficulty also, right? If you start learning,
Right.
for example, C is very notorious for pointers. So
Yeah.
is it still the good programming language to start with, or should people start with, let's say, JavaScript or Ruby or Node, things like that?
Actually, C++ has this important concept called pointers, which I have been asked multiple times in interviews. I interviewed for multiple companies like Jump
Right,
Trading or Alpha Grip, lots of companies. But every time they do ask how do these pointers work, how they are managed in memory. So these are some of the concepts that are very well pointed out, very well you learn yourself while you're coding in in C++.
yeah,
So that was one of the reasons I felt that C++ is doing good in that domain. Uh,
right.
and object-oriented programming, whatever the questions an interviewer might ask, are well covered in this language. So
Correct.
definitely a good point to start.
Yeah, so I think I am pretty much in line with what your thoughts are. We should typically start with a core language like C or C++ or maybe Java if you're fancy a high level language, but don't really start from JavaScript because
Yeah,
then you will miss out on many important CS concepts as well, right?
yeah,
For example, like you rightly pointed out, pointers, right? Now, if you don't have knowledge about pointers, you will never learn the memory importance of memory in a computer, right? You will have
exactly.
to solve multiple segmentation, those segmentation faults that notorious segmentation faults that occur in C, C++. And only then you will be able to understand the importance of memory, and then you'll be able to write memory efficient algorithms as well, right? So, uh, cool. So for beginners, they have learned the basic language, C, C++, Java, or anything that can on in which they can code the data structures that they are going to learn. But
Mhm.
any good recommendations that you might want to give for learning a particular language?
As in the resources you can go into while learning the
Yeah.
language.
Yes, yes,
Actually, there are like documentation, of course, is a very good resource to learn a language, but it's too big. So
right,
generally, people do start off watching. There are multiple resources on YouTube.
right,
People generally start off with that, and eventually, when you want to solve a problem, you search on Google or whatever, you find answers on Stack Overflow, and that's the point you would like to look into documentation, like how the things are working behind.
yeah.
So eventually, that was the process I followed. Initially, I just went through the basics just to write a code. Then, whenever I got stuck, I would look up, and then documentation was the best resource that helped me learn.
And at what point should a person start switching from? So, for a person who's just started learning a particular language, should he simply master that language first and then move to DSA, or should he start working on the DSA as and when he's learning?
Actually, I have seen both approaches people were going through. I have seen multiple people who just would learn basics of a language, start
Yeah,
with DSA, and then learn eventually. The other thing, as you mentioned, is learn language to the fullest, every concept. Then you're confident about it.
Right.
You never have to look like you don't have to think about like what you're typing. But in some cases, you will look at some solution and you would have to think. In the other case, right? So, but that's according to I feel like that's according to depending on the person, how he is he patient enough to learn the language to the fullest, because
Yeah.
I feel that it's very difficult to learn language to the fullest. It's very good if you learn it, but
Yeah.
if that mastery level is difficult to achieve in 4 years of college even. So
Yeah.
uh, I started off, I learned the basics, very like
Right.
data structures, algorithms, some basic data structures, and then I started off with the algorithmic part.
So how
So
did
that's
you
how.
start? That's a, good point that you've touched it. How did
All
you
right.
start learning the language, and when did you transition to DSA?
Got it. So my approach, definitely, I will just speak about my approach. No need to
Yeah.
follow it. It was not a good approach. I feel there were a lot of knowledge gaps left out. So what I did, in my 12th class, I had that basic learning of C++. And in college, I just revised those concepts. I knew how to write basic code. So once I was able to write that code, I started off with this code courses or the websites which were available to practice competitive programming. That was very famous at my time in college. Everyone was doing it, so I straight away started. And how I did, I just solved the A and B problems on code courses, and then I would not able to solve C problem, of course, because that
Right.
includes a lot of architectures and algorithms. So then I would look up the solutions, try to solve it, and at many point of time, I would feel that I don't know how this person is writing this code, how this is working. So uh, that was a process that took a lot of time to learn. I would have to solve a lot of questions, and then I would learn that okay, this is a new concept, this is a new algorithm to look at. But the approach I feel is good enough. In this approach, the approach I followed, a lot of knowledge gaps, as in I was not aware of how memory management is done, how to write good code, right? In computer programming, you just write a main function and you just write
Yeah.
all the code in it, right? So that's not a good thing. But these were the things that I missed out on, and I felt there were a lot of knowledge gaps. So then the better way to do it is take a topic, learn through it, do some problems on it, some धीरे धीरे like slowly increase the level of problems, and eventually you will master that topic. And once you master that topic, you will see, whenever you see a problem, you will see that structure. Okay, yeah, okay, this problem is from Aris topic. So what is the structure, how to solve this problem? You will able to see this thing, and that ultimately comes when you master a topic, right? So
Right.
that's what I feel on it.
Cool. Let's take that, continue that discussion and take that topic that what are important topics for DSA? A
Okay.
must-know topics, specifically from a point of view of an interview. Uh,
Correct. Okay, so the first one, very basics, of course, everyone does it. Arrays, right? It has a multiple questions. Though arrays seem simple as data structure, but there would be multiple algorithmic questions that you would be able to solve in arrays, right? Uh, then it would be the next topic would be to go up with linked list. Linked list is a good topic to start. Uh, Stacks, queues. Eventually, when if you have done with the basic data structures like these, then it's a good point. You move on to heaps, maps, binary trees and all that stuff. Segment trees is a good topic to go through. And then finally, when you're done with all that, you have confidence in that, start with dynamic programming and graphs. One of the most, like two of the most important topics, two of the most asked questions are from this topic, dynamic programming graphs. So धीरे धीरे increase the level, slowly go to higher level questions, and that's some of the topics I mentioned. Of course, you can find this list somewhere.
right.
Yeah,
All right. So once, I think the structured way for learning a DSA is work on the theory, and at the same time, as long as you have the theory, it is important to practice it as well, right? Do as many questions as you can. So any tips on how to like if you know some free resources that our listeners can basically go to and improve their DSA skills, what would that be?
right. So I practiced on a lot on I would say in the beginning, code forces and codeship. Then I eventually, when I wanted topic-wise questions, I moved on to LeetCode, and Interview Bit has good resources. Then binarysearch.com is a very pretty new website, but it has some very beautiful interview questions. And AtCoder is a website that I love because it has very concise question statement to the point. And just
Okay.
focus on that. Some of the resources I mentioned, yeah. Filter out from the topics and then practice. Another website, I forgot the name. It also has, uh, sorry, I forgot. Uh, but yeah, these are the main websites that I practiced. I just came across this website just a few months back, and it seemed pretty good, but I forgot the name now.
Okay. All right. And where did you learn the theory from? So all the websites that you mentioned are primarily for practicing the
Exactly.
questions. So
Right.
if I don't know what graphs are, or for example, if I don't know how to solve a DP problem intuitively, right? So
Right.
how do you build that particular intuition so that you can solve newer questions?
Okay, so uh, how I learned was there were some top coded blogs that were very well written. There are some very good articles on Geeks for Geeks, which are quite interesting. Some of them are not so good, but still, it has a lot of resources to learn from.
Right.
And when you learn from these movies, you see a simple program written, you see how it is running, you see simple methods of that data structure also. So I feel that Geeks for Geeks, top coded blogs, and documentation, these three things are very good enough if you want to learn theory. CP algorithms also has good theory and questions also mentioned if you want to focus on competitive programming. But otherwise, also very well written algorithms and codes are available on that as well.
Right. And you yourself teach these concepts, right, in Scalar. So how is that coming up? What is your mantra while you teach the students? Do you focus on more on theory? Do you take more problems? How do you particularly teach the students?
It's both. It's both actually. Like generally, the first class is building up the intuition, like how data structure is formed, why it's important, some of the real world applications of that, so that the students are able to see why it's so important, right? And where in real world applications you will be able to use that. So the first class generally is theory, building the intuition, and then we move on to the questions, which help the students to see that same structure in whenever some other new question comes up. The structure is important. You know that okay, this question belongs to this category. Then you will be able to see that structure and attempt that question. So the other classes are built on to form that structure in their minds. Uh, Basically, the main thing is that the thinking capability, right? That they are able to
Right.
think while when they see a new problem. So
Understood. Understood. So I think this would be a good resource, or these are good resources for people who are trying to learn DSA. But nervousness during the interview is a real problem.
exactly.
So my next set of questions are primarily focused on that particular aspect, where how do you deal with a real interview? What are the steps that a person can take? How do you behave in a real interview? That would be my next question.
That's a very good question. Actually, I've seen people getting full nervous in the interview. They would mess up their own introduction at
Right.
times, and then the whole interview goes like this, and not so good. I mean.
Yeah.
So I feel when you start an interview, a smile goes a long way. Feel comfortable with the interview, first of all. That's very important. Give an introduction that the interviewer feels interesting. He would think on your introduction, like some of your interesting things you have been doing on. That helps build that, mm, what do you call it? Between the interviewer and you would just build it, so that you communicate throughout the interview and you would be able to speak freely, not like just through the that scare of that interview that it was going on. Just have a normal conversation, right?
Yeah.
The person in front of you is also a normal person, right? So that's very important to start off, and so you should be well prepared beforehand, like how you will going to start. Uh, Prepare what you are going to speak about yourself, some of the interesting points about yourself that the interviewer might be happy to listen about. And that is just the starters, that won't impact your results, but it would help you speak comfortably in the interview. Uh, that's
Right.
one of the points I feel very important. Then, of course, the problems will start. The interview will give you start giving you questions. That's a different question to talk about how to approach them. And
Yeah.
then finally, the last part will be the interview will ask you how do you like if you have any questions for me. Right?
Right.
That's the third thing.
So, how do you?
So
What are the typical questions that that one should typically ask the interviewer? Uh,
actually, I feel I saw that generally I would just research the company which I'm interviewing with, and some of those questions I would ask like what the company, how this product is working, how this functionality did you build on it. If the interviewer is from that team, right? So that's a good question to ask. Definitely, it shows you have researched the company and you're really interested in joining.
yeah.
And the second
Very
thing is
important for. I'll just add one line over here. It's very important for, especially if you are applying for startups, right? This goes a long way in giving the comfort to the interviewer that hey, I have researched about your company and I'm genuinely interested in your company. Maybe not for companies like Facebook or Google scale because
yes,
you might
that
not be end up joining their team, so it won't be relevant. But for startups and for mid size companies, it's very good advice.
right.
Yeah,
So the next thing would be talk about the tech stack they're working on. That would help you
yeah,
learn about that. What kind of work you will be doing, right? And that's a good question to ask. Then you might happen to ask a full day, like how what's a day look like for a software engineer working in your team. So that gives you an idea that what you will be working on throughout the day. And how is the work-life balance? How's the culture? How much time do you spend on designing? How much time do you spend on coding? And that's a good
right.
question to ask.
Yeah, and that will also give you a hint about what your typical day would look like, right? So, it's a very good question to ask again to the interviewer. One more typical question that I generally ask in such scenario is, what would be my role if I join your company? What are the typical projects that I'll be handling?
Okay.
What is the, if they know the tech stack on that particular project, what is the completion stage, what is the team structure over there, who's leading the team, who will be my manager, so that I can go back and research about how my manager works and what is his credentials and profile. That is something that we can that will give you more insights around where you'll be joining. So you can also ask the similar line of questioning. uh, you pointed out one interesting point wherein you said, managing the question which is being asked in an interview, that's a different beast in itself.
Right.
So, how do you typically answer? So there are various scenarios. One scenario is you just go blank as soon as you hear the question and you don't know what
Right.
to do. And this other extreme is, oh, this question is very easy, and you are like, I know this question. Yesterday only I practiced it. So both of the situations I've handled it, but I want to know from your experience, how do you handle that kind of scenarios?
Yeah. So let's take up when you don't know a problem, when you are blank, totally blank, right? So for both ways, one of the very important thing to do is first clarify the question. Uh, there are some edge cases that the interviewer might not mention in the problem statement itself, like what about negative numbers? Are there negative numbers in this question or not? Something like that. That's not a good example, but definitely there will be some ambiguities in the question which you should look forward to first of all before jumping into right into it. Then the second thing is talk about those examples given. Like, are you thinking correctly for those examples? Is the working of your code, like which you're thinking in mind, like how your code might work on these examples? Think about that and talk about like, okay, in this example, this is how it's working. This is how we're getting the expected output. Then, once you're clear about what's the scenario going on, the next good thing would be to, you know, if you're totally blank, then start with a brute force solution. Just do what the interviewer asking you to do. Like maybe a full on like a two power exponential solution would also work, right? But just give a solution. That is also a good way to start if you have nothing to do. but sometimes you will see that brute force is also very difficult to think on. Uh,
Yes.
but just talk through your whatever you're thinking. That thought process is very important. I have been in interviews where I was not able to solve a question, but since I was talking through my thought process, that really helped. Interviewer was able to understand which direction I'm leading to and why I am leading to that. That's very important. And then he would give a hints, he or she would give a hints to you, and then you will be able to arrive at some solution. Don't just get quite totally just mum and don't utter a word that is not giving you any good and not the interviewer any good. He's not able to learn about you and you're not able to proceed any further. So that's one of the main things when you start thinking on a question. You should always talk through your approach. Whatever you're thinking. You're thinking about stacks, say stacks. I'm thinking about stacks. You say I'm just thinking about brute force approach, say about that, how you will implement that. Just talk through approach.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
that's one
think
of the things.
many times when you just talk your thoughts loud, right? You speak out your thoughts. The
Yeah,
interviewer will get to know what you're thinking. If you are going in the wrong direction, he might course correct you as well. That hey, you are going in the wrong
exactly.
direction, and he might give you some hints. So it's important to pick up those hints as and when the interviewer is giving you. And if he says something, right, try to make sense out of it, and if you're not able to think anything out of those words, just say repeat those words in your own words itself, right? Frame that sentence in your own words. That will buy you some more time to uh, think about that particular solution, right? So
Right.
these are few tips that I typically do just to keep my interviewer engaged and buy some time for myself to think about a particular solution. So you guys can also do that to you know to basically answer and communicate in such kind of cases. But how to hide your excitement when you know the answer?
Okay, that's a very difficult thing to do because generally how we think, as soon as a question is thrown on us, we just start thinking about the solution, what might be the solution.
Right.
Different things start coming to our mind and we just start uttering the most optimized approach. If we have solved the question before, we just utter that out, and that I guess won't leave a good impact in my opinion. I would love to know what's your opinion on this. But if you utter out the most optimized approach straight away, that is
Right.
like you have already solved the question. You cannot answer in most optimized approach in general cases in just 5 to 10 seconds as soon as you heard the question, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to control the excitement. Uh, think about, like, as I told, first of all, remove the ambiguities from the question. So that will help you control the excitement because once you have heard the question, you know what the solution is. But once you ask the ambiguities, clear out the
Yeah.
ambiguities, and you have controlled that excitement. Uh,
Correct. So it's
so
one way to do that is you ask a clarifying question, whether it is or maybe write some sample input and output, that this
right,
is what I understand from your solution and this is how I'm going to explain. It's
right, right,
wise to explain the intuition first and then go to the approach, because
exactly,
even if you know the answer, right? Think how you got to the answer. Don't mug up the answer, but
exactly.
try to explain the intuition first, and then once you have explained the intuition, coding it up is quite trivial. And that way you have also hidden your inner excitement that hey, I know this question, I'll nail this particular interview. uh, Specifically, so I'll give two different I'll basically break down two product companies into two different sects. One is a fang kind of an interview, right, which is primarily based on how you perform in a DS algorithm, especially if you're getting hired till an SD2 level. So in those companies, specifically for Facebook, if I have to talk about, they ask two coding questions, and you have to solve both the coding questions within 45 minutes. 45 minutes is a hard stop. Means your
Right.
the link that they have shared will go off, right? So you have, and 5 minutes is basically for the introduction. So net you have 20 minutes to write complete code of all the both the questions that are basically asked to you, right? In those cases, try to give the optimal solution in the first attempt itself,
Right,
right?
right,
Because
right.
you don't have time for giving multiple iterations on it, right? For example, a typical question for a phone screen in Facebook would be, I, let's say you're asked to find out whether a given string is a palindrome if you remove one character from it. It's a very
Right.
simple, straightforward solution. So you just explain the intuition behind it in one line and then start coding it and try to code it in 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
That ways, because if you are asked such kind of a simple question, the second question is going to be hard. On that question you'll have to spend more time, so optimize for the time in especially when you are appearing for final interviews. Even Google, for example, has a
Right.
1 hour strict deadline. They won't exceed,
That's
or is it 45
45
minutes?
minutes. 45 minutes. 45
It's
minutes.
45 minutes. Okay. Even Google has a hard limit of 45 minutes. They may, I think they don't, they're not very particular
Yeah.
about asking two questions. They can ask one question as well, right? So
Right.
Facebook is quite particular about two questions. So even for Google, right, you have 45 minutes to answer a particular question. And if the question interviewer has asked you a simple problem, probably what he wants is that you should be able to code the complete problem in 45 minutes and have some time left to maybe discuss on the more advanced what do you call it,
Follow-up
basically
question.
an advanced version of that same problem, right? So
Right.
there might be two problems, and then depending, if I just change one variable, it becomes a, from an easy it jumps to a hard problem suddenly. So that is something that the interviewer might want to have. So bear this particular thing in mind, right, when you are specifically interviewing for Funk. For other product companies, right, mostly what I've seen is people tend to if you answer it in a order one kind of a fashion, that hey, this is my optimal approach, they might be taken aback, and they might say that hey, this is, he's able to solve xyz question because he has seen a particular this particular question before, right? I have seen this happening in multiple companies. So there, hold your excitement and maybe take your time, take your interviews time. Most likely people would be satisfied if you answer one question in one interview. So just place your pace as per which company you are basically getting interviewed at. I hope that
Right.
answers. What do you think, Rahul? Seems like a decent
Totally agree.
approach. All right.
Yeah, that's
Cool. So we have covered what basically how to react during an interview, what to prepare. Now let's answer a few questions that are there from our audience, and then we'll wind up. Right. Before we move to the audience question, do you have anything to say, Rahul? Then we'll.
no, it looks good, I guess.
चलो, ठीक है. Uh, Prabhat has an interesting question, which is around why at this time greatest match of all time is going on. Watch India versus New Zealand. Prabhat, I know how it feels. There's a ClickBuzz tab open right beside my YouTube live screen. So I feel your pain, but this session is a recorded session, so you can view this session after the match is over as well. So tune back on YouTube once this match is over and watch this session. Uh, this user Python test is asking, can you talk a little bit about specific DSA resources? Uh, I think Rahul, you have given us your thoughts around what are the resources. Let me just summarize what you said in my words, right?
Right.
So I think when it comes to resources, right, there are free resources available and there are paid resources, right? There is no, what do you say? Uh, there are ample amount of free resources as well, right? It's just that it is scattered around. You'll probably have to do a little bit of more effort is required from your side when you go for free resources, because the content is not very structured, right? I think Rahul, you were also hinting that you started from competitive programming, but then you later realized that hey, DSA, I have to do DSA and then only I can solve the harder problems. So having a
Right.
structured approach really helps. There are so interview bit is a free platform which will provide you a structured approach. It will start from basics like arrays, time complexity, and then we'll move to tougher and challenging problems on graphs and dynamic programming and all that. So it will provide you a basic structured approach. Motivation is one thing that you should have on your own, right? The way you gain motivation is I take this particular example in any any learning thing that you need to do. So if you start exercising, for example, yourself, you might be motivated to go to gym for 1 day, 2 days. But let's suppose a gang of three guys join a gym together. It's more likely that they will stick to the gym schedule, because if one guy is slack, the other guy will basically pull him off. So it's important to study in a group, so that if one guy is not motivated to study, the other guy can motivate him to solve more problems. And perseverance is basically the key. Keep on whatever you're learning, right? It doesn't matter whether you do one question or two questions or three questions. Continuously doing the questions is the key, right? So start from very basic things, right? If, for example, you are doing arrays, solve at least two, three problems of arrays. See what are the similar problems on different platforms. I'll say if you're doing arrays, don't just stick to interview bit, right? You go to lead code, see what are the challenges of arrays, see what are the problems that are there in the discuss section of lead code there also. And whenever you're solving, this is very important, right? What people do is they solve a particular problem. It is passed perfectly fine in interview bit or lead code, wherever you're doing. TC and everything, like time complexity is fine, everything is fine. Then also it is important to go in the discuss section and see what are the different solutions of the same problem. That will open up your mind, right? Not knowing one approach of a problem is still fine, but knowing all approaches of the problem and having and know the pros and cons of each approach, that is what will make you a better engineer and better, more confident during your interviews. So focus on that. If you're looking for paid courses, there are paid courses as well, which will help you. So paid courses, I see paid courses as if somebody wants to beef up its body, right? You probably intake proteins. You will have a gym trainer who will basically give you advice on that, advice on how you should exercise, what you should eat, and all that. So paid courses like that. It will You will see results quickly, uh, right? Because it's a structured approach. There are people who have done that in the past, and they are the ones so who'll be explaining to you. Rahul, for example, have done it himself. Now he's in the giving all the gyan to everyone and telling key, this is what you should do and this is what you should not do and all that. So paid courses will help you, but I'm not denying the fact that you cannot do without a paid course. There are enough free resources available out there. Uh, if you have the right mindset, you can look into the free course and learn those. Next question, let's is by Prashant. How interviewed? I think the question is, how are interviews different for senior software engineer who has 8 years of experience? Uh, I'll probably take this question as well, since so I have around a decade long of programming experience. I have worked in different kind of companies. I've worked with startups. I've worked with big companies as well, and the expectation that changes, right? So first expectation, as long as you're going in an IC role, that means you will not be directly managing somebody. In those cases, you must expect that there should be at least one or two coding rounds, primarily focused on your DSA skills. If you are not able to clear that, that's basically a filter criteria, not a selection criteria. If you are not able to clear those rounds, you will not be offered a role in that particular company as well. Having said that, the level of DSA question decreases, right? The complexity of the problem decreases. At 8 years of experience, people might not really ask you to implement a B plus tree or a segment tree, but they will expect you to, if they give you a tree, you should be able to invert it, or whether finding out whether what is the diameter of a tree. Simple standard problems for trees. Those are the simple problems that you should be able to do. Maybe not the complex, right? How do you insert an ABL tree? These kind of questions might not be asked for our 8 year experience, but the other set of questions that I said are very much relevant. I personally have never been asked a question on dynamic programming in any of the farm companies that I've interviewed for. There are few startups who have asked questions on dynamic programming though, and this is something that I have noticed by discussing with my friends who have interviewed in farm companies and have got offers. None of them were also asked questions on dynamic programming. Having said that, there are people who have been asked questions on dynamic programming. If you go to Lead Code and a bunch of other sites like that, you'll notice that dynamic programming questions are also relevant. I'm just telling my experience that I have never been asked those questions. After, apart from your, coding questions, what really will give you an offer or a good level at 8 years of experience would be your performance in two kind of interviews. One is the system design interview. How well you are architecting a system. Are you able to communicate the right trade-offs? If yes, only then you'll get a SD3 or a staff engineer kind of a role. Otherwise, you will be hired at a SD2 level. Years of experience does not define which role you are going to get. Your performance in system design interview does. The other important round, which many people just term it as an HR round and ignore it, is a behavioral round, which will define your level again. Your performance in this round will define, sadly, I'd say sadly, it will define what level you are, getting hired at. SD3 or staff will, there is a HR round, which is going to be a determining factor whether which ladder you are getting hired for. So these are the three rounds, right? Filter criteria, DSA, and then the leveling criteria is based on system, your performance in system design, and uh, behavioral rounds. All right. So Pratik has an opinion about C. C should always be the first language to start with to know the internals. Post that, any OOPS language should be fine. I think this is in line with what we also said, right? Like you said, Rahul, we can also start with C++ because C++ will also give you a very good idea about pointers and pointers. So that's also a good language to start with. You can learn OOP concepts using C++ as a language. So C or C++, it's a tough fight. I'll personally choose C++ because that will give you an idea about OOP concepts as well. So Shivang was asked a question. This question. Okay. uh, Given an array where two of the elements are unique and occur in pair, find both unique ones in just one traversal. Given two elements are unique and other occur in pair. I did solve for two. How about one? Any idea around this, Rahul? There's no solution that's coming to my mind. So what he's asking is, there's an array where only two elements are unique, and they should always occur in pair, and others occur in pair. So basically, it's like 1 1 2 3 3, something like that.
Right.
Both are unique ones. Find both unique ones. Okay, we need to find the unique elements in the array, right? So uh, I know one approach. You XOR it with the elements, others will turn into zero, but that will give the sum of,
A's or B's. It will give you.
yeah, it will be A or B. I'll think about it and let you know, man. There's no solution that is coming to my mind right now.
Okay. Zol will give you A or B, right? And after
Yeah.
that, you have to find both numbers and one traversal. Are you allowed to use extra space? That will be my follow-up question. If you are allowed to use extra space, then it's very easy, I feel. uh,
How would you do with an extra space?
just show the frequency of every element.
That's true. A plus B. Zoring is one. Uh, if the range is limited, right, then also we can use if the elements are, let's say, from 1 to n only, we can use the
Mhm.
same array do
Exactly.
uh,
Yeah.
to do that. But
No constraints
not
are given
sure.
on that.
Yeah, not sure. Maybe after we go through the entire set of questions, we'll come back to this question again. All right. So next question is how to crack the coding round for service-based company as well as product-based company. Uh, any initial thoughts on this, Rahul?
I guess you will be the better one to answer this.
Okay. For service based or product based, right, there's not much distinction between the two, especially when it comes to distinction. I'm sorry. What I was saying is whether you are appearing for product companies and coming from a product company background or from a service company background, the kind of interview you'll have in a product based company would be quite consistent, right? They don't really uh, once you have cleared the screening stage, they don't really care about where what your past experience was, right? So if you consider that, the rounds would be similar to what we have been saying. Coding round is the most important round, depending upon where what your experience are. There will be relevance given to system design and HR round as well. So the to crack it, I have done a series on YouTube, which primarily talks about what to learn for a service based company if you want to transition from a service based company to a product based company. Where can you learn these skills? And finally, I'll have spoken about how to apply for product based companies as well. So you can go and watch that particular series. We are also doing one live session. Anshuman, our founder, will be taking that particular session on Saturday at 5 p.m. So you can join that session. That session is primarily focused upon how one can transition from a service-based company to a product-based company, maybe a QA engineer to a software engineering profile. All those questions we will answer in that particular session. Uh, so Bhautik has a question that he feels like he wasted 4 years in college. Currently, he's working as an Angular developer. Is it late for him to start DSA? I'll probably let you answer that. I saw a no instantly when I read the question, so
I
I'll let
guess
you
it's
answer.
never late to start with DSA. I myself, in my first 2 years college, I was a bit focused on going for MS and research. It was in my third year then when I get started on DSA. So I had this 1 month where I practiced DSA with my full heart. I would look out for the streaks on interview bit, maintain that
Right.
streaks, right? So in that 1 month, I was able to prepare good amount of DSA. I would say enough for interviews at least, right? Most of the interviews. But yes, so I guess if I'm able to do that in 1 month, so definitely it's not that difficult for you, uh,
Yeah.
for anyone, I mean.
So it's never late. I think I am on the similar lines. I when I was in my college, so I'm from a non CS background. I was in Triple E, and Triple E, if you don't know, is very tough to clear. At least that is what I think. It's not a easy course to clear, right? So I started my DSA in my last semester. To be very frank, I had around 1 month to prepare before the placement session starts, and I don't know if it's still there on YouTube. I watched a DSA lecture by a IIT Delhi professor, Naveen Garg. I'm not sure if that is still there on YouTube. Those were very good lectures, right? Each lecture is around 1.5 to 2 hours, and that is just theory, right? So for a non-engineer, first, as I said during the initial part of the session as well, that first focus on the theory so that you know what linked lists are. Then only you'll be able to solve questions on linked lists, right? So that was basically my area where I started and I learned my coding and DSA, to be very specific. So it's never late to get started at. I, being a non-CS engineer, can do it in 1 month, so you can also do it. It's not rocket science, and if you, the more you do it, right, the more you'll see that it's quite easy. To be very frank, right, it's people are afraid of it, either because of two reasons. First, they have not found a good resource who can build the right intuition for you. If you find a good resource which can build a good intuition for you, you'll find a noticeable difference in your approach as well. So finding that particular mentor or a resource is very important. Find a resource which works for you. Once that happens, it will be a piece of cake. And it's never late, right? As I said, I have had friends who had 4 years of experience in consulting, and they have transitioned to a software engineer role. Those are not forget about engineers. Forget about computer science engineer. They are not even engineers. They've done BBA and masters, and then finally thought that, hey, being a computer engineer is cooler. So they've transitioned their role from consulting to coding. So you can also do it. It's never late to start. Uh, Next question is by Samarth, who is asking if freecodecamp.org is perfect to learn as a beginner. I've never used this particular site. Have you used this particular site?
I have
Um, I'm, I'm sorry, Samarth, we've not used this particular site, so I can't comment on it. Okay, it's basically an extension to her problem. Does one programming language is enough? I think to crack any interview, more than the programming language, what you'll require is the DSA skills. Most of the companies, in fact, I won't say nobody will ask you language specific questions, but I'd say 90% of the companies will not even test you on the programming language. Top product companies like any of the farm companies, if you consider, they don't even test you on a particular. They'll say, "Ki, this is the DSA problem. You can choose whatever language you want, right? You can even code in Dart, which is, if you don't know, it's a language for the browser. So just like JavaScript. So you can code in whatever language you want. Language is just a tool to get you solve DSA problems. Cool. Shobha Rani has a question around, please give a right strategy for solving medium questions and also improve my logics. I do practice, but what should be the right way of practicing? Any insights on this, Rahul?
okay. For solving medium questions,
Yeah.
I would say if okay, so since you are practicing a lot, that's a good thing. But the right way of practicing, what I feel like how I did, I would make a list out of questions. I would select that okay, I will do this today, do these questions today, and then I will just practice them. I would have generally a pair programmer with me. I have my friends who are also preparing with me, so that's a good way to keep you interested. Like Mohit also pointed out, a person with you is a good way. Like you could discuss things out and you learn their approach, you speak out your approach. So that's good. Read out solutions, as again pointed out to Mohit. So that will give you a new way to think sometimes, an optimized way maybe that would help you. So doing questions, okay, if you are able to solve, well and good, but discuss with someone also, that will help you. read out, discuss solutions. That will also help you. If you're not able to solve, take a time span. Let's say for a medium question, you're taking 1 hour for now. If you're not able to solve in 1 hour also, uh, maybe just go with the brute force first of all. If that's okay, if that's passing basic test cases, giving TLE, that's good enough. Go with the solution. Read the solution then, and then with the next questions, you will be able to solve them most probably. Uh, so I feel that is a good way.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's spot on. I think that's the right way. All right. This question is by our another mentor, Naman Bhalla, who also teaches in Scalar. So I think this is in context with when we have seen a particular question. Should we uh, tell uh, tell it inform the interviewer that we have seen this particular question?
right.
I'll let you answer this first, Rahul, and then I'll also give my thoughts on this.
Actually, I encountered the situation once, but it was a very hard question. So I did not tell the interviewer that I've seen this question. Instead, I went on with the brute force approach, and but the thing was, I was clear with my intuition. I was able to explain my whole
Right,
thought process, like how I thought the first time. I was able to, copy that, clone that whole scenario in the interview.
right.
So that gave the interview what he wanted, and I was able to answer the question. But the thing is, I guess I don't know if I can say that it's ethical or not. But, I don't know. Like, what's your take on it?
I think so. I'll probably clear some things here, right? I think the reason I see it in this way, right? The reason I have seen that particular question is primarily because I have solved multiple questions. That's the reason that I have got that particular question. So I'll give an analogy. Let's suppose I'm studying for IIT JEE, right?
Right.
And in IIT JEE, a similar question that I've seen and solved earlier has been
Mhm.
asked. So is it? I'll say it's my luck, and I'll just answer that particular question,
Right.
right? So I'll keep it on my luck, and I'll still answer that question. If the interviewer asks me, however, that hey, have you heard this question before? I'll say that I have solved this before, but it's not my problem that somebody is asking me the question that I have already heard, right? If I solve 600 problems on lead code, I will get a question that I have seen. So I think that has to go in the that has to be a good star on your performance and your practice that you have done. I see it that way.
Right.
All right. I want some tips because it's a coding interview. I want to crack it. I think, Harshit, you can rewind the entire session. This is what we've been doing all along. Right. I'll move to the next question. So you have done internship yourself, Rahul, and quite recently you've done your internships. Uh, so what are the must-know things that one should know before attending an internship, and how to excel in an internship?
Okay, so definitely every company uses a different tech stack, right? And you cannot know every tech stack. But what the thing is common is the DSA part, right? In every interview for internship I faced, I have been asked DSA questions, be it Goldman Sachs or Coordination or the startup I interned with, the thing. DSA was always a part of the interview. So DSA, number one thing you should know, you should practice a lot. I feel, because in future also you will come across such interviews. So not only for internship, this is important. Another thing important for internship is that's not DSA relevant, but there are some parts of interview you will discuss your projects. And if you have done some projects in any programming language, do they solve a use case or not? But do describe them with great enthusiasm. You should be clear about what your project is doing. Again, this is for like since the person asked about internship, I'm assuming that you're in your second or third year, so you don't have past internship experiences, but you definitely would have done some projects. You would have a coding profile you could talk about, or you could do some open source experiences, right? So all these things you can talk about interview, and that interview will get an idea that yes, you are doing some good work out there. So yes, the DSA and projects, that would be the things. I would recommend. What's your take on it, man?
I think bang on, man. You have been quite recent intern. I did my internship. It's almost a decade all. I think that is. I won't bore people with a decade old advice. So I let that advice stick in with the guys. Cool. So next question is, what type of DSA question do different companies focus on? Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. Uh, all right. Do you want to take a stab at it, or do you want me to answer that?
You go on first, then I will
All right. ठीक
add
है.
on.
I think Google में again talking from personal experience and few of the my friend circle based on their experiences, I'm telling you. Uh, if you are asked a question which I'm from a topic that I'm not saying, please don't hold me accountable for that. For Google, right? For Google, I think when I interviewed, I had five DS algo rounds. Out of those five DS algo rounds, four questions were based on DFS or BFS, basically an application of both, application of either of the two approaches, and one question was on backtracking. So mostly they have focused on graphs. I think that you can expect some questions on backtracking, not just backtracking. You'll primarily have to uh, apply some DP logic on that backtracking problem. It was not a backtracking was basically a brute force solution. On top of it, you can apply DP as well. I reached till the backtracking solution, so that's why I'm telling you the backtracking. But it was a DP problem. So graphs and DP and probably trees as well. You can expect tricky questions on arrays as well, right? The two pointer approach. If you, for example, they might ask you questions on that also. I have not, I don't have any first hand experience on being asked linked list questions or heap questions in Google interviews, but there might be few people who have been asked questions on that as well.
Binary
Uh,
search is another important topic. Yeah,
yes.
that is asked in
Binary
Google.
search is one of the. I think binary search is there for any Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft as well. It's a hot topic to ask in the interviews. Uh, right. So for Facebook, primarily Facebook questions tend to be easier as compared to Google ones. Uh, so if I have to compare the DSA level of DSA that people you can expect, it will be Google right at the top, and then Facebook and Amazon will have similar kind of difficulty level, and then Microsoft maybe. Uh, Facebook will primarily ask questions around arrays, stacks, and queues. I have been asked. I've uh, I have not been asked a question on graphs in Facebook. Uh, Not sure if that is the common case. A common, rather than going in team company specific, right? A good way. I'll tell you a good way to find relevant question of a typical company. Sign up for LeadCode Premium. Uh, Go to leadcode.com/companies slash the name of the company. It will be, for example, if you want to know Google questions, type Google company/Google. That will list down all the questions that have been asked in the Google interview. There is a you can sort it by frequency, and then you'll get what is the most asked question and so on. So this actually serves as a very good way to prepare for a company specific interview as well. Let's suppose you have a Google interview coming out in 1 month. How would you prepare? How do you revise your concept? It's not a way to brush up your DSS skills or build your DSS skills, but it's a very good way to brush up your skills, not build your skills, right? So
Discuss has very good. Sorry to
yes,
interrupt, but
yes.
Discuss has very good questions. I saw that a thread on Google on-site interview questions, and it has a lot of questions that have been just asked in interviews at Google.
Yeah,
So that's also a good resource to go through.
yeah. Discuss is there, and then Blind. I don't know if you guys have heard about this app or not. Blind is another way where you can get insights around what are the latest questions being asked, what are the typical packages of people in XYZ company, XYZ location. So sign up on Blind. That will also give you a good insight on such content. All right, let's move on. There are many comments, so let me pick up the relevant ones that are relevant to this particular topic. Huh. So he's asking ki there are many questions on DSA around over 2000, but solving those much is not possible. What should we do to excel in an interview?
Okay, that's true. I mean, there are a lot of questions, and you cannot do every question. So I feel like if you choose a topic and you are done with 20 medium and 5 hard questions, then you would be able to solve the other ones as well. So it's not important to do every question. It's important to cover every topic at least once you're going on for interview. Uh, so that's my first take on it. Any opinions from your
Yeah, I
side?
think bang on, man. It's the right approach. Do practice all the topics and different ways of solving the problem. You can solve 10 problems with one same algorithm or same logic. So build the right intuition. Go for the breadth and then go for depth in each topic. That would be my suggestion. Uh, let's take. So Prabhat has a question. Can SD1 interview with 1.5 years of experience involve system design? I think no. You won't be asked any question in system design. The max you can be asked is to design a class diagram of a particular system. For example, you may be asked, how do you design a library management system? And they may ask you, check your whether you can write object-oriented code. That would be the max level of testing that we can people expect out of one year, 1.5 year experience candidate.
But actually now companies are a bit changing their interior design. Like I
Okay, so,
in coordination also it was asked. Like I was in third year and coordination has a system design round for
wow.
the for internships even. So it actually is changing. Many companies in international also Databricks
What
or
kind of
companies like this.
questions are these?
Okay, so in system design, generally, what I have seen, in my opinion, are some companies only give a system design question to check that okay, what are your like concurrency skills? How comfortable OS? They would ask you
Mhm.
to include threading in whatever you implement. Let's say you implement
Understood.
a hash map, a simple hash
Mhm.
map. So to check how you are how you're including concurrency in that, that might be a good thing. Another,
Right.
they don't want you to focus on high level, like you won't know about what is how Spark is useful, how Hadoop is useful. They don't know, they don't want you to know about all these things, but just tell them that there might be an existing data structure that would help me solve this problem, and then I would use this. I would have this API endpoint, maybe just give a business logic of how that API endpoint is working. That should be enough, in my opinion, like what I have faced. But
Yeah,
I have seen
makes sense.
system design for experienced, and that's quite different, uh, I guess.
Right, right. I think I understand what you're coming at. So uh, there are companies, specifically if I have to name them, Amazon and Microsoft. They typically test you on OS and networking as well, right? Especially if they are hiring for campus. Uh, so in that interview, they might ask you some components of system design just to test whether you know what multi-threading is, what multiprocessing is, and those concepts. But system design, what I understand of system design is how do you build Instagram? Those kind of questions.
Yeah.
Those kind of questions are something that would be very heavy for a 1.5 years experience candidate. Designing small components, maybe a library, parking lot. These are very slightly easier question that can be asked for a 1.5 years experience candidate. Uh, I think we have answered this question as well. Okay, there are people who are just discussing the solution of the same problem that one user added, right? So people are discussing around XOR-based approach and hash map approach.
But
Uh,
hash,
Hash
yeah,
map would
it's
be extra storage.
right. And the Zorban will be using two traversals, I guess. It's difficult to think of one traversal. I have been thinking.
Yeah. Okay. This might be relevant. We'll think about this. Don't worry, we'll post it as a community post, or we'll give you the answer. We'll think about it and give you the answer. All right. So Yash is asking, he's not able to think about a up approach when it comes to dynamic programming. How can he improve upon that?
That's actually one of the difficulties I faced when I was practicing. So I feel that thinking first of all like recursive solution, because dynamic programming has those overlapping subproblems and optimal substructure probability, right? So thinking the recursive solution first of all, then memoizing it, at least you have a solution ready, right? So recursion plus memoization is a good way to start. Generally, I've seen in students as well as for myself as well that recursion becomes easier to think than bottom up, and it is much intuitive as well. Like you just go on from one problem to other smaller sub problems, right? So that's a bit easier to think. Uh, Once you have comfort zone, once you've developed a comfort zone in that memoization technique, then you would see that how the states are changing between in the transition state between the recursion, right? And then I guess you can jump on to bottom up solutions. Otherwise, if you just want to directly think on bottom up, how generally the right way to think, start from the base cases. Just think what will be the answer for the base case, then just go to the next step and think that which base case will be used to develop this state. And while going bringing up that state, when you are finding the answer for that state, you will eventually build up that formula that how we are for a normal dpij, how you are coming from the previous stage. So that would be my take on it. Any opinion from your side?
All right. I think you are the better person when it comes to dynamic programming. So I'll let you let that be the final one. So Tanu says she has an interview for Freshworks, which is a product based, and she's very nervous for the coding interview. Um, Being nervous is, I think, the most natural thing that comes to us human beings. So I think that's there's no harm in accepting that. Having said that, right, one thing that really sets up a good candidate apart is how well he or she starts in the first 5 minutes. Right, in the first 5 minutes, generally talk to the interviewer. Don't talk of anything about computers, or just ask how is your day. Hi, a hi with a smile is also goes a long way in building a rapport, right? So a simple hi with a good smile will set you apart. That will calm down some of your nerves. Uh, then the interviewer also in the first 5 minutes will try to calm your nerves down. They might ask you to have a glass of water and things like that. You can keep a bottle or a glass of water beside you in case you want to have a sip during the interview. And while you're talking as well, right? Just imagine that during an interview, right? Specifically, when I face this particular problem when I started interviewing for system design round specifically. For DSA, it was still not a problem, but for system design rounds, you need to give all different versions of all different solutions for a same problem, and then discuss the trade-offs as well. And then to discuss that, it is very necessary that you build a good rapport with the interviewer. And one of the things that I did to overcome my challenge was that I have started imagining that my interviewer is not my interviewer, he's a colleague in my company, and I'm explaining the solution to my colleague. So the way I would explain it to my colleague, I would behave exactly the same way in the interview as well. So this trick works for me. Just check whether it works for you as well. It's not a Ramban kind of Aushadhi, right? So it might or might not work for you. Just wanted to give one tip to you. Any thoughts on this question, Rahul?
I feel one of the things that helped me a lot were mock interviews. I had a friend who was very helpful, and we would take mock interviews for each other. And I would have Google Doc sheet prepared for each mock interview, and we would have prepped out two questions beforehand, and we would make it look like an original interview, exactly like start off with your introduction, a simple problem statement given to you, with just a simple example, right? So just build on it, and then the other person would give you feedback on how you perform, what could have you improved, right? So that mock interviews are actually quite helpful when you come to nervousness in interviews. Uh, sites like Pram, or even with your friend, it can be helpful if you practice at least two or three mock interviews. That will help you get rid of that nervousness.
Right. Uh, by the way, that the answer to that question, Prabhat has given this particular answer. In case while I look for the other relevant current, you can go with the answer. All right. I have found the next question. Next question is by Survadeep Das. He's asking, is competitive programming necessary for Google and DirectEye? What's your take on it? I have a very strong opinion on it, hence I'll share it after your answer.
Okay, so for from my personal opinion, for Google, I don't think so. I don't think that much. If you're good in DSA, you would be able to crack Google. DirectEye is very notorious in asking dynamic programming questions. They do ask some typical, very tough dynamic programming questions. But again, if you are comfortable with DSA, I don't think competitive programming would be necessary to crack Google or DirectEye. That's my take. Computer programming is a sport which you would like to do. It's not like a pressure, or it's like don't go for if everyone's doing, just do it. That's not a good way, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it rose to fame in early near 2010, I guess, when many people from India started representing India in world finals, and then we saw it become a good spot. Everybody, just jumping in and doing competitive programming just to get into Google and DirectEye. I think that's not a very good approach, right? The kind of questions that are typically asked in DirectEye and Google, those are different. I'd say different, if not easy, different than what you get in a competitive programming kind of competitive programming. The good thing about Google and DirectEye interviews is that most of the questions are repetitive, so it's easier to prepare for Google and DirectEye interviews. Right? You go to LeetCode, search, sort by frequency, and put a company tag equal to Google, and you'll find if you do first 200 questions, most likely you'll will clear Google interview. Don't As long as you're not mugging up the solution, you are understanding each and every problem. Let me be very clear. Otherwise, you will go and simply mug up the first 200 questions. You might not be asked the same question, but it will open up your mind enough to clear these interviews. That is what I'm getting at. So if you solve 300 questions on LeetCode, you are in a good position to clear those interviews at these companies. So, short answer: no. Competitive programming is not at all necessary for clearing any interviews. Forget about Google or DirectEye. Uh, if our goal is only Microsoft, what should be my topic of interest? I think, irrespective of any company, right? Your topic of interest should be DSA. If specifically if you are looking at SD1 or SD2 kind of roles, for higher roles, add the system design components as well. But primarily focus on the DSA. Ninja is when will the next batch of Scalar Edge start? Uh, I am not sure about it. Do you know, Rahul? I
Also
don't
not
know the
much.
official date. Uh, Check the website scalar.com. There will whenever we are announcing a next batch, we will make an announcement. Uh, can you design centralized log system for itne okay, not relevant to our question topic now. Bittu is asking, how is soft skill important? It is very important. It might not be that important in an interview for entry level roles, SD1 and SD2. For higher up levels, soft skills becomes very very important, and they play a very important role in your company growth as well. How well you communicate with your peers, what is the kind of rapport you have with your peers, that defines how how much faster you're going to go in your career ladder. So do not ignore this particular thing. It is very very important. Listen. So Prabhat says he knows pretty good system design as a 1 year experience SDE. Are there any companies which can value the design skills apart from the DSA skills? Prabhat, I think most of the non-farm companies, right, they might value your design experience. Companies like Swiggy, Flipkart do have a system design round as well, right? Most of the farm companies will not. They have a minimum year of experience gap and all that thing, and it's easier to move things and create exceptions in smaller companies than the farm companies. So most of the non-farm companies or not product companies will value your system design knowledge as well. In fact, their system design knowledge is a prerequisite in many of the product companies as well. So apply in the non-farm companies, your skills will be valued over there as well. Any tips for behavioral questions? We'll take a separate sessions on how to answer behavioral questions in the behavioral round uh, in a different session, right? I'm a Mech grad doing Spring Dev in service-based company. Should I move to personal project or my company project along with DSA is sufficient for product-based company? I think irrespective of where your past background is, DSA is the thing that will get you into product companies. Join this session on Saturday, which is specifically on the topic on how to transition from a service-based company to a product-based company to know more about it. Uh, should I join Academy? Just write to us. We'll let you know. I don't know your background, so I can't suggest here. Uh, just register on scalar.com. You will get a call back from somebody explaining what Scalar is and whether it is a right fit for you or not. All right. We have come to the end. This is the last question for today. Uh, This is how much DSA do we need to practice to crack Amazon, Microsoft, or Google? Uh, I'll give you a very philosophical answer on this one, okay? Because the factual answers we have given you right through the session. And this philosophical answer was basically given to me by Rahul Dravid, Indian cricket team player, Rahul Dravid. He came to my convocation in 2013. And this is what he had to say about his life when he was not selected in the Indian cricket team. He was playing well, but he was not dropped out of the team. And for 2 years, he was dropped out. And he drew inspiration from a bamboo plant. What is the USP of a bamboo plant? The USP of a bamboo plant is that in 5 years you would not notice any growth in the plant, right? In the five in those 5 years, what this particular plant is doing is that it is uh, deepening its roots, right? And after 5 years, once it comes out outside the earth surface of the earth crust, you'll start noticing this particular change. You'll start noticing that it is growing. Its height is increasing day by day. Every day you see that plant, you'll see a noticeable change in its height. So what is it? And in 6 months, it will just grow to 5 feet or 10 feet or maybe even higher. It can grow up till 90 feet as well within just 6 months. So people say it took 6 months to grow those 90 feet, but actually it took 5 years and 6 months to grow till the 90 feet. So the more you practice, what I'm trying to say over here is, the more you practice, the more you spend time in building your fundamentals, the better are your chances to crack Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, or Facebook. And I'll not just stick to cracking these particular companies, but actually excelling at work as well, right? The practice that you do before the interview will define whether you are, luck is a statistics taken personally, right? It's not. Of course, there are people who can, who are asked the same question and they get, they consider themselves lucky. But to be in a situation where an interviewer has asked a question and you have heard that particular question before and you have solved that particular question before, for that also you have practiced 400 lead code problems, or maybe 600 lead code problems. Or as somebody was saying, there are 6,000 problems on DSA, maybe he's done 6,000 problems on DSA. So practice as much as you can. There are no shortcuts when it comes to cracking the interviews at these companies. uh, I will leave the thought here. Just let this thought sink into your mind as well. And I'd also like to thank Rahul, who took time and for us and explained everyone that explained everyone basically that how to apply and how to basically appear in coding interviews. Thank you so much, Rahul. Any last words that you have?
No, actually, that last answer was quite good, and I would like to leave it on that.
Right.
So thanks for having me here. Uh, that's all from my side, as well.
All right. Thank you guys for joining in. Tomorrow we'll have one live mock interview on coding. Right. We'll invite one guest and we'll take a mock interview tomorrow. There you'll basically get a flair of how a particular coding. We'll keep the standard, like we'll keep the format of the interview in line with what companies like Google and Facebook do, and the questions will also be similar. And we are inviting one person who's worked in Google Munich, I guess, and he's done competitive programming as well. He was India's rank one India top coder on top coder. So he will be joining us tomorrow, giving you an insight on how to appear, actually interview. How does it actually feels like interviewing at Google, and give anecdotes over there. So please subscribe, and if you like the content, please like this video and subscribe to get notified about our upcoming videos. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Bye, Rahul.
Bye.